Okay, so I want to talk about one money mistake that keeps showing up in every generation. And the weird part is, it almost never feels like a mistake while you are doing it. It feels normal. It feels responsible. It feels like this is what a successful life is supposed to look like. So let me give you four people. Robert is 68. He worked for decades, bought a house in the suburbs back in the 1980s, raised a family, kept the garden, nice, did the whole thing. From the outside, Robert looked like someone who had figured it out, and honestly, for a long time. He kind of had. Then there is Karen. She is 52. Two kids, a good career in marketing, a nice car, a decent house, and a holiday most years. If you looked at her life from the outside, you would probably say she was doing well. Then there is Marcus. He is 38. He worked hard, paid down student loans slowly, watched houses move further away every year, and after a while, started spending on the things he could actually reach. Restaurants, weekend trips, concerts, travel, the kind of stuff that at least made life feel like it was happening. And then there is Zoe. She is 24. She has TikTok, a side hustle, a stocks and shares ISA, probably a nice water bottle, and she already knows more finance words than most people in her family knew at her age. She knows what an index fund is. She knows compound interest. She has seen the videos. So four people, four different ages, four different economies, four different versions of what money was supposed to mean, and somehow they all walk into the same trap, not because they are stupid, not because they never budgeted, not because they are all reckless with money. The trap is quieter than that. The trap is that every generation gets handed a picture of what doing well is supposed to look like. And most people chase the picture before they build the substance underneath it. That is the mistake. They prioritize the signal of having arrived over the actual financial position that would make a rival real. And again, this is why it is so hard to spot. Because nobody sits you down and says, hey, your generation is going to pressure you into buying this version of success. It just leaks in, through your family, through your friends, through advertising, through social media, through what people admire, through what people quietly judge. And then one day, when you finally have enough money to live that version. You do. Because it feels like the next step. So let's walk through each one. Because I think when you see it in someone else's decade, it becomes a lot easier to see it in your own. Robert grew up watching his parents rent. For his parents' generation, renting was normal. But after the war, and through the decades, after that, owning a home became the big sign of stability. That was the dream. The house, the fence, the neighborhood. The feeling that your family had finally planted itself somewhere. So when Robert got a solid job, and the bank approved him for a mortgage, he bought the house. And not just any house. He bought as much house as the system told him he could handle. And to be fair, in the 1980s. This was not crazy. Interest rates were high, but inflation was high too. Property was moving. Homeownership really did create wealth for a lot of people. And Robert's house did go up. It is now worth around 4 times what he paid for it. So on paper, Robert looks wealthy. But this is where the problem shows up. Robert is 68 now. Most of his net worth is inside the house he still lives in. His company restructured in the 1990s, so the pension he expected was not what he thought it would be. He has some savings, but not enough to make 25 years of retirement feel easy. And if someone says, well, just sell the house, that sounds simple, until you remember he has lived in that neighborhood for 40 years. That house is not just an asset, it is his life. So the house itself was not the mistake. The mistake was letting the house become the whole plan. Robert built the symbol of wealth. He maintained it, he improved it, he protected it. But underneath that, the retirement foundation was thinner than it looked. The signal was strong. The substance had gaps. No, Karen's version is different. And honestly, I think hers is easier to miss. Because it was not one huge decision. It was 100 small decisions that all made sense at the time. Gen X came up in the age of dual incomes, career ambition, and the idea that if you worked hard enough, you could have more than your parents had. And in Karen's case, she did earn more. That part worked. She got promoted at 32. So she upgraded the car, she hit 6 figures at 38. So the family moved to a bigger house, the kids got older. So expenses went up. School costs, activities, holidays, better furniture, better restaurants, better everything. And none of those decisions looked insane by themselves. She could afford them, she had earned them. That is what makes lifestyle creep so dangerous. It does not usually arrive as one dramatic bad choice. It arrives as well. We make more now. So why not? But if your expenses grow as fast as your income, Your financial life does not really get stronger. It just gets bigger. Karen made more money than either of her parents did, but her savings rate did not move that much. The gap between money coming in and money going out stayed almost the same. Just at a nicer level. At 52, Karen looks successful. And in some ways, she has equity, she has assets, she has a career. But she is also close enough to retirement that the math is starting to feel tighter than it should feel after 20 strong earning years. For Karen's generation, the signal was lifestyle. Nice things, nice trips. The life that showed the work paid off. And the problem is, she paid for that signal every month. Automatically, quietly, through direct debits, car payments, subscriptions, bigger bills, and a life that became expensive to maintain. Now Marcus is the millennial version. And I want to be careful here, because if you are a millennial, some of this really was not your fault. The 2008 financial crisis hit at exactly the wrong time. Housing got harder, student loans were heavy. Wages did not keep up with the price of the life people were told to build. So when millennials got blamed for not buying homes or not hitting the same milestones, that was not always fair. But there was still a trap, it just looked different. If the old signals of arrival became unreachable, like the house, the pension, the clear career ladder, then people started spending on the signals they could reach. Experiences, travel, brunch, restaurants, festivals, subscriptions, convenience. And the culture made this feel wise. Spend on experiences, not things. You cannot take it with you. Live your life, do not become like your parents. And some of that is true. Experiences can be worth it. I do not think the point of money is to sit in a spreadsheet and never enjoy your life. But Marcus did what a lot of people did. He used experiences as a replacement for building assets. He spent his late 20s and early 30s collecting memories. And some of them were probably amazing memories. But now at 38, he has very little invested, no property, and this low-level anxiety that keeps getting pushed away by planning the next trip. So again, the trap was not one vacation, it was not one dinner out, it was not enjoying your life. The trap was believing that because experiences felt more meaningful than stuff. They could replace asset building, they could not. The arrival signal for millennials became the lived life, the passport, the photos, the story. And a lot of brands sold that message beautifully. But it was still a costume. A nicer costume maybe, a more emotionally defensible costume, but still a costume if there was not a financial base underneath it. Then we get to Zoe. And Zoe is interesting because Gen Z should, in theory, be the generation that escapes this. They have had more finance content in their face than any generation before them. Some of them learned about investing before they learned how taxes work. They know index funds. They know side hustles. They know high-yield savings accounts. They know the phrase financial freedom. So you would think the trap would be gone, but it is not gone. It moved online. For Gen Z, the signal is often aesthetic. The apartment that looks good on camera. The outfit, the desk setup, the phone, the skincare, the coffee, the brands that quietly say, I have taste, I have money, I know who I am. And the strange part is Zoe is investing at the same time. She puts £50 a month into a stocks and shares and that is good. She should be proud of that. Starting at 24 is a real advantage, but if she is investing £50 a month while spending £200 a month on things whose main job is to look good online, then there is a mismatch. The trap for Zoe is not ignorance. It is performance. She knows the right words. She can talk about investing, she can post about money, she can sound financially aware, but the actual numbers may still be small because the aesthetic is growing faster than the assets. And to be clear, Zoe is not doomed. Not even close. She is 24. She has time, she is already ahead of where a lot of people were at 24. But the trap is sitting there with a ring light, AA clean background, and a monthly payment attached to it. So this is the same mistake in 4 outfits. Robert had the house, Karen had the lifestyle, Marcus had the experiences, Zoe has the aesthetic. And underneath all of it, the same pattern is happening. A generation defines what arrival looks like. People buy the look of arrival. And then later, they realize the actual wealth did not grow as much as the signal did. So what does escaping it look like? It is actually pretty simple. But simple does not mean easy. You separate the signal from the substance. You decide, on purpose, that you are willing to look less wealthy than you actually are for a while. So that later, your actual wealth has room to grow. That might mean driving the older car, staying in the smaller home, taking 1 big trip instead of 4, buying the normal version instead of the camera, ready version, letting a few people assume you are doing less well than you really are. That last part is hard, because most of us do not just spend for ourselves. We spend for belonging. We spend to feel like we are on schedule. We spend to show we are not behind. We spend to prove the work paid off. And that is exactly why smart people still fall into this. So Robert's escape route would have been keep the house, but do not make the house the whole retirement plan. Fund the pension. Build liquid investments. Do not let all the wealth sit inside one asset that is emotionally hard to sell. Karen's escape route would have been every time income went up, let lifestyle go up only a little. Maybe one upgrade per raise, then save or invest the rest. Let income growth outrun lifestyle growth. That one difference changes everything over 20 years. Marcus's escape route would have been keep the experiences, but put a ceiling on them. Maybe one major trip a year, not 4. Then automate the difference into an index fund before the money becomes another weekend plan. And Zoe's escape route is to make the actual number grow faster than the look of the number. If she wants to post about investing, fine, but the portfolio has to become more real than the aesthetic around the portfolio. Because saying the right things about money is not the same as building the money. So if you want a rule, I think it is this. Assets first, lifestyle second, not forever. Not in some miserable way where you never enjoy anything. Just until the assets are doing enough work that the lifestyle is actually paid for. That is the part people skip. They try to buy the lifestyle first and hope the assets catch up later. But usually, the lifestyle becomes heavier. The fixed costs grow. The habits settle in. The expectations get normal. And then it becomes much harder to reverse. So I would ask this very directly. Which version of this trap are you in right now? Is it the house that makes you look wealthy, but holds most of your net worth in one place? Is it the lifestyle that expanded every time your income improved? Is it the experiences that felt like living but quietly replaced building? Or is it the aesthetic that performs wealth faster than it creates wealth? And this is not about shame. I really do not think Robert, Karen, Marcus, or Zoe are bad with money. They are just doing what their generation taught them success was supposed to look like. That is why the mistake repeats. Every generation thinks their version is different. And on the surface, it is. But underneath it is the same question. Are you building wealth? Or are you buying the thing that makes it look like wealth is already there? The first step out is just naming it. Because once you can see the costume, you do not have to keep paying for it without thinking. You can still own the home. You can still enjoy the holiday. You can still go to dinner. You can still care about how your life looks. But you put the assets first. You build the base first. And then the lifestyle has something real holding it up. That is the version that actually lasts.